Hello, everybody. It's Buckeye Boggs. Before we go to the video that was pre-recorded yesterday, I just wanted to let you know that as we were recording this preview for Ohio State versus Indiana, we had not yet heard the news about Seth McLaughlin's injury, and so that is not mentioned in this preview. And obviously, that would have been something that would have been brought up, and we would have talked about had we have known before we recorded this video. And it probably would change maybe slightly our predictions at the end of this video as well. That being said, the information that is in this video is fantastic. You're all going to love it. And so, that being said, enjoy the Ohio State versus Indiana preview brought to you by the OHIO podcast. As my good buddy here, Punky, decided to join the video as well. So take care, everybody. God bless. OHIO. Go Bucks. And welcome back to the OHIO podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Buckeye Boggs. That man over there, that's the wild man, Chris Wilds. And this is our big Indiana game preview. Now, Chris, I'm not going to lie. I knew at some point in my lifetime there was a chance that Indiana would be good. And here we are. This is the day. This is the week. Indiana's 10-0. The question is, how good are they? Well, we're going to find out this week. We are going to find out, and we are going to try to hopefully dive into some numbers, some statistics. We have an interview planned for you for this preview so that you can be better informed fans and we can be better informed fans so that when we make our previews at the end, or make our predictions at the end of this preview, Chris, our predictions will be hopefully close to what we perceive to be how this game is going to go. We are the official Ohio State podcast of Fansided and Scarlet and Game. Head over to scarletandgame.com. If you do not like the way our faces look, we don't blame you. You can listen to us over at scarletandgame.com and read a bunch of great articles while you're over there as well. By the way, you can download and listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And if you do, and if you are, please give us a 5-star review. That really does help the show out and gets our podcast into the more ears just like you of Buckeye Nation. We are also the official Ohio State podcast of The College Huddle. Head over to thecollegehuddle.com, and there you can find not only an Ohio State podcast, yours truly, but 75 others from coast to coast covering all kinds of colleges from the Big Ten to Mountain West and everything in between. And we even got one from the Pac-2, believe it or not, the Belligerent Beavers covering the Oregon State University Beavers out there. All right, Chris, here we are. It is time. This is the third top 5 matchup of the season for Ohio State. So far, Ryan Day is 1-1 in those. He lost by 1 point in Eugene, Oregon, 32-31. He went over to Happy Valley and defeated James Franklin, which is something that he's always done. Happened to be a top 5 game as well. And here we are, the first matchup ever between Ryan Day and one Kurt Signetti of the Indiana Hoosiers. And this is another top 5 matchup. Believe it or not, here we are.
Well, I'll tell you, Eric, I didn't know that Indiana would ever be any better than what we saw in 2020 with Michael Penix Jr. I didn't think it was going to be possible. I really didn't. And if you look back at our previews for this year, even with all the hype surrounding Kurt Signetti, we didn't have a lot of hope that this was going to be a top tier program this season. We thought they might get some wins, but we didn't expect this. And I'll tell you, it's exciting. I'm excited for the Indiana fans. I'm excited for Big Ten football. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said we really just don't know how good they are. And like you said, this is another top 5 matchup. And people like myself who've been ever so critical of Ryan Day and his 2-7 record against the top 5 teams prior to that Penn State victory. I got thinking about this, and Corey and I talked about this on the Buckeye therapy session the other night. Ryan Day could very well end up with 4 top 5 games in this season if we go back to the top or the Big Ten championship.
Mm-hmm. That's not
He,
including a college football playoff game.
and I was going to say, then he goes to the college football playoff. He's going to end up with at least one, if not two more top five matchups in there. You
Hmm.
have to figure if they make the run all the way. That would be five. He has a very, very real possibility for all the critics like myself of coming out of this season. He came in 2-6. He could come out a game under 500 against top five teams. Should he make the run that we all expected this team to make at the beginning of the season? But before he can do that, Eric, we got to look to Saturday, and it's a big one.
It is, Chris.
Speaking
It
of big
is.
one,
Hmm.
Fox TV once again has given Ohio State the big one by putting them at that noon kickoff again, the dreaded noon kickoff slot to which Ohio State can just never come out on fire. It almost feels like this is their way of trying to get Ohio State. It really does. But
It's interesting, Chris, because the players talk about how they like it. Um, but they don't seem to play like they like it. at least at least not in the first quarter anyways. Um, I have a feeling this is going to be a little different. I think this is going to be more of a heavyweight fight. Um, and I alluded to the fact that I feel like Ohio State feels more like Rocky. This is a Rocky. Indiana is a Rocky. They are Rocky 1, okay? This is no one knows who this guy is. No one knows who this team is unless you've googled them like he asked you to. But this is the huge underdog coming into Columbus, Ohio, man. So switch roles. We're Apollo Creed and Rocky 1 and they're Rocky here. But I do like the fact that we're not acting like Apollo Creed. We're not acting like this is an exhibition. Um, Everything I'm getting from Ohio State, all the intel I'm getting. By the way, Indiana's they're coming off a bye week, so they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this. I was told today that Ohio State had multiple coaches working on Indiana specifically for weeks now. That this wasn't that this is they did not coming into this they're not coming into this game blindfolded. They're not coming into this thing with one hand tied behind their back, or with some kind of misconception that we're Ohio State, we'll roll our silver helmets out there and we'll take care of business. They are taking this game exactly like they should. That this is a top five team, and the season rides on this game. And I love to hear that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, this is Ryan Day's season right here. He loses this one, no Big Ten championship for the fourth consecutive season.
Hmm.
The natives will get restless, Eric.
Oh yes.
Then you put yourself in a must win versus that team up north, which it already was. But now you're in a must win just to make the playoff.
Correct.
I think at 10-2, either of these teams, whether it's Ohio State at 10-2, should they lose, whether it's Indiana at 11-1, 10-2, whatever happens there last week, but we know what's going to happen there last
Yeah,
week.
they have to
Um,
go 11-1 if they're going to make the
yeah,
CFP. They cannot go
they
10-2
yeah
with that second loss being Purdue. That will knock them out of the playoff.
yeah yeah. But I mean, if they go 11-1, which we all anticipate they will, both these teams are making the playoff. I don't think there's any question about that. But is making the playoff enough? I don't
I
think it is.
mean, well,
I really don't think it is.
before we answer that question, we need to first answer, we need to get through this Saturday. And so let's dive into that, Chris. Let's
Yes.
take a look at Ohio State versus Indiana by the numbers. And it's not ugly. I mean, it's not pretty if you're an Indiana fan. In fact, it's quite ugly if you're a Hoosier. It's beautiful if you're a Buckeye. Ohio State leads the all time series 79 wins to only 12 losses and 5 ties. And 4 of those 12 losses, Chris, were the first 4 times these teams played in the early 1900s. Okay. The last loss to Indiana happened in 1986. 88, the score of 7-41. Would you like to take a guess who the head coach was in 1988?
Well, 88, that would have been that'd been Earl Bruce, right? No,
Incorrect. Earl Bruce was
yeah,
87. This was John
Coop.
Cooper's
That was
first
Coop's
year.
first year. Yeah.
Coop's first year. So Earl Bruce lost to him in 87, and
Yes.
then Coop lost to him in 88.
Yes.
Last meeting in Columbus 2 years ago in 22 was a 56-14 win for the good guys. Last year in Bloomington, we also won that one 23-3. Largest margin of victory happened in 1957 for the Buckeyes. That was a 56-0. That 1988 game that I mentioned earlier, that was the worst loss we ever took to the Hoosiers. That was a 7-41 defeat. The Ohio State's longest win streak over Indiana is the current win streak, 28 straight. It is also the longest win streak over a conference opponent in any conference in college football
Yeah.
currently. It is the longest win streak in college football amongst conference foes,
Hmm.
hands down. It is also the longest conference win streak by any team in the Big Ten ever. That includes the 20, I think it was 25 game win streak that Michigan had over
Yeah.
Indiana that was broke a few years ago, and the win streak that Ohio State had over Northwestern that was a really was a really long streak until the Wildcats broke that back in the mid 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
So this is it. This is the longest streak that's going on in college football right here amongst two rivalries, if you will. Indiana's longest win streak, well, that's the one I mentioned to you earlier, 4 games from 1903 to 1913. Ryan Day's record against the Hoosiers is 5-0, and this is Curt Cignetti's first attempt at the team who he said sucked in Ohio State. Trust me, we've not forgot those words, Mr. Cignetti. Looking at the last 10 games against the Hoosiers, going all the way back to 2014, it's been all Ohio State. 42-27, 34-27, and a couple close games. Would you like to take a gander who the head coach was in those closer games for Indiana?
For
14
Indiana,
and 15. Yep. 2014, 2015. You remember who that was? That was one Kevin Wilson.
Kevin Wilson. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, my brain's freezing up here, man. It's like
Yeah, that was
I know
Kevin
it wasn't
Wilson.
Tom Allen. It's the guy
No.
Tom Allen replaced.
After Kevin Wilson was replaced, it kind of went Ohio State's way for the most part. 38-17 in 2016, 49-21 in 2017, 49-26, 2018, 51-10 in 2019. That was Ryan Day's first year.
Yeah.
And then we had the 2020 COVID year, 42-35. That's the one you mentioned when
Mm-hmm.
Michael Penix Jr. was the quarterback for the Hoosiers. They almost clipped us that year. Of course, a lot of Indiana fans still hold a grudge against us, thinking they should have went to the Big Ten championship game over the Buckeyes because we technically didn't have enough wins, and some stupid rule that Karen Wilson, what's his name? What was it? Wilson?
Kevin Wilson. Yeah.
Kevin Wilson? Karen Wilson is what we call him. Made up when he was commissioner. 54-7 in 2021, 56-14 in 2022. Last year, 23-3. All right, Chris, this is very, very interesting. The tail of the tape. Look at these numbers.
Yeah, and it's not often we go in and talk about an offensive team that really owns the numbers versus Ohio State right now. But if you look, these are two very potent offenses. Ohio State averaging 37.8 a game. Indiana's averaging 43.9 a game. Rushing yards, slight edge, very slight edge to Ohio State. And I'm talking slight as in less than 9 yards per game less. Passing yards, very similar, slight edge to Indiana. Again, about 9 yards per game. These guys are averaging less than 2 yards per game difference. These offenses are almost like mirror images
Mm-hmm.
as far as the numbers go. Very efficient on third down is Indiana at nearly 50%, 49.1%. Ohio State, after a poor performance last week, down to 43.6. Red zone efficiency, both these teams extremely extremely good inside that red zone. Uh, Indiana 53 of 56. Ohio State should be 38 of 38. Thank you, Will Howard, for getting your
Yeah.
knee in the way. But they are 37 of 38.
Now, look at that red zone real fast. Now we own the percentage. 37 of 38 is better than 53 of
They're there a
56
lot, though.
by 1 percentage point. But they get to the red zone a lot. We when we score, a lot of times we're scoring beyond the red zone when we score. That makes a big difference. Indiana does not. They get
Right.
in the red zone, but then they punch it in when they get there. They are very efficient inside the red zone. But they, as far as touchdowns are concerned, they're doing so from inside the red zone more often than we are.
Yes, very much so. Then you go and you look at the defense, Eric. And again, two very good defenses. Ohio State definitely has an edge here overall. Ohio State only allowing 10.3 points per game. But you look at Indiana, giving up less than 2 touchdowns a game, Eric. That's a recipe to win.
Hmm.
Both teams giving up less than 100 yards per game rushing. Both teams fairly good against the pass. Ohio State a little bit better at 160.1 yards per game they give up against the pass versus 183.3 for Indiana. Total yards per game, Ohio State giving up about 251, just shy of that. Indiana about 255 and a half yards a game. And you look down at the opponent's third down efficiency, just under 31% for Ohio State, just over 33% for Indiana. And red zone, both teams have given up roughly the same amount of trips to the red zone. Ohio State's given up 23, Indiana 22. But look at the numbers. When opponents get inside the red zone against Indiana,
They're scoring.
they're scoring. It's just about 50% with Ohio State, but with Indiana, 19 to 22 times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that tells you a lot about the recipe that you have to face this Indiana team. And again, it all goes back to Eric. If you look at the competition they've played, there's no doubt that Ohio State has played superior competition to what Indiana has. But you can't 100% hold what the schedule makers do against this Indiana team that is performing at a high level right now.
No, you can't hold it against them. But when you look at those numbers and you realize Ohio State's played Penn State and Oregon, and
Yes.
those numbers affect your overall numbers. And Indiana's best opponent has been Michigan, which
Who
is a
couldn't throw their
500
way out of a wet paper bag.
who is currently going into the last two games of the season 5-5. What's that tell you? That
Yeah.
tells you that Indiana's competition level nowhere near as good as what Ohio State has had. And
No,
so
not even
those
close.
numbers can be skewed slightly. But in a game like this, in an atmosphere like we're going to see, hopefully, bring it Buckeye Nation. You can throw those out the window. I am incredibly interested to see what Signetti is going to bring to the table as a play caller. A lot of people say, this team's not even as good as Penn State. Maybe when you line up player for player and you look at like recruiting rankings and things, I would agree with you on that. However,
Man,
when
this
you
team
add
plays well, though.
when you look at the coaching staffs, I'd take Indiana's all day long, especially the head man and Kurt Signetti over James
Mhm.
Franklin. And that has to account for something when you're looking at this from a statistical and a schematical viewpoint.
Well, and
And
Eric,
go
just
ahead.
to touch on this too, the one thing Indiana doesn't do that Penn State does, Indiana does not shoot themselves in the foot with silly
No,
mistakes.
no, very disciplined football team. And I think that has a lot to do with the amount of football that these guys have played. They have brought in a lot of transfers from the G5 uh, world who have played multiple seasons and were just looking for an opportunity, a chance on a big stage to show what they could do. And there's not going to be a bigger stage than the one in Columbus, Ohio this Saturday. Game day is going to be there. Big Noon Fox is going to be there. All the eyes in the college world are going to be on Columbus, Ohio in the Horseshoe at 12 o'clock noon Eastern. And the world wants to see, is Indiana for real? We're going to find out. Is Ohio State, are they a legitimate national champion contender? We're going to find out. There's going to be a lot of questions answered this Saturday for both of these teams. And a lot of people are saying that this could be kind of a preview for the college football playoff here, that both of these teams have a very good chance of making it. I agree. Um, if Indiana loses, let's say Indiana loses a close game, that's as good as a win in a lot of people's minds, right?
Hmm.
If Ohio State loses, Ohio State's probably going to drop down to somewhere around 10 or
Yep.
9.
9, 10.
But now there's a lot more pressure on Ohio State, and the the chirping that's going to be taking place in Buckeye Nation is going to be very, very loud, including the chirping that takes place from you. But I like your attitude going into this, Chris. I'm rooting for the guy. We're rooting for the team. This is our team, and we want them to succeed. If Ohio State, in my opinion, is going to be the team that wins a national championship, you have to prove it this Saturday.
Yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll have Sammy Jacobs from the Hoosier Huddle with us. Hang tight, everybody. The OHIO podcast is brought to you by Mastermind. Mastermind specializes in 360-degree high-definition mobile video mapping, GIS integration, and traffic safety studies. Mastermind cares about traffic safety and keeping you safe on the roadway. Visit Mastermind at onlinemastermind.com. And welcome back to the OHIO podcast, everybody. As you can see, Chris and I are now joined by our special guest, Sammy Jacobs from the Hoosier Huddle. It is in my opinion, the best. It's one of the largest, and I think it might be one of the only football-only Indiana websites out there that I can find anyways. Some of them cover football and basketball. You guys are football only, man. You guys love Hoosier football, which means, Sammy, this season you've got to be on cloud nine, brother.
Yeah, we're all Indiana football all the time, through the bad, the good, and this just happens to be an awesome season. Looking back on it, I've been covering this team for 11 seasons now, and a lot of people have helped me work through this site and all those things. And just wish that they were all still working with us and stuff like that. But this is for all the hard work that everybody at Hoosier Huddle has put in, and through those, that whatever 2-10 season, and going to Rutgers and being the only one there in the press room and all that stuff. This makes all of that worth it.
Awesome, dude. I commend you for that, and obviously, being someone who, is in a kind of in a the realm of journalism, although we're more of a fan driven aspect of it. I got to say that's got to feel good for you, man. I'm happy for you, brother.
Thank you.
However, I hope that come Saturday, we're the ones happy and not you. But either way, I'm looking for this to be a really, really good game. I've watched Indiana several times. They are for real. We're gonna find out if they're better than Ohio State come Saturday. And so let's dive into this from your perspective. Let's learn more about Indiana, because we need to make sure that we are informed when we make our predictions here. So that being said, let's start with the head man, Curt Cignetti. Now, this offseason, Sammy, you and I talked about this. He kind of shot his shot, right? And he called out Purdue, and then he called out Michigan, and then he called out Ohio State. So far, he's 1 for 1 on those. You took down the evil empire there. Now you got Ohio State here. Here's the question. How did Kurt Signetti do this? As someone who's gotten to ask him questions and cover him this season, and you've watched this team get built in the small time frame he had to build it in, how did he do this?
Well, I think it's, there's multiple layers to it. And yeah, we'll call his first speech, the Triangle of Triumph, I think they're dubbing it, those three teams. But, he came in from JMU, and he had, his whole Google Me line. If you go and Google Kirk Signetti, every stop he's been at, he's won. And this isn't taking over the Ohio State of D2, whoever that would be. No, you're taking over the Indiana, Pennsylvania, who hadn't had a winning season in forever, and turn them into a winning program. You take over Elon, who was riding like a 20-game losing streak or something, and you turn them into a winning program. Now, James Madison was winning when he got there, but he helped transition that program from the FCS to the FBS, which is, I would take a very hard thing to do. And he had James Madison, what was it, 11-0 last year or 10-0 last year before losing to App State and then coming to Indiana. But he has his blueprint, he has his process, and he's said that he's learned how to win under Coach Nick Saban at his time with Alabama and how to run a program. And he has a plan. He's working the plan. And I think that's the first step with the head man. Then you go to the current era of college football where you can win now. If you invest in your program, you can win now. And Indiana, they up their NIL. It's not where you guys are at whatever, $20 million. But, you bring in 13 guys from JMU, and I think that was the cornerstone of it. They know Kurt Signetti. They know how the program works. They know the culture. And you can mesh them with the guys who stayed at IU and kind of teach them how things work, what to expect. And then you bring in a couple other transfers. You got Curtis Rourke, who, the big question on Rourke was, can he get back to that 2022 level when he won MAC Offensive Player of the Year? And he did. And I would say he probably surpassed that. Now, I didn't watch a lot of 2022 Ohio games before that, but I would say he's probably surpassed that level. And then you get running backs like Justice Ellison from Wake Forest and wide receiver Miles Price from Texas Tech, and you sprinkle guys in. And then, everybody saw the Michael Jordan documentary, right? Any little thing that somebody says about Kirksey, that he's going to take it personally, and anything. And it's, he'll make something up. I heard Ohio State doesn't like my recliner chair, so why we're going to try and hang 50 on him, it's something like that. But he finds every little edge that he can, and he's really been efficient. Practices are shorter; they're like 90 minutes. You get in, do your work, and get out. I don't know what line of work you guys are in, but I know as a teacher. Heck, if my boss was like, hey, come in, get your work done, you could go home, that would make my life a lot happier, and I'd work a lot harder to get, 8 hours of work done in 90 minutes or whatever it is. So, he brought in his strength and conditioning coach from JMU too. And IU against Michigan State, they had a clean availability report, which you don't see in week, whatever it was, 10 or 11. So they're healthy. They've gotten elite quarterback play, which IU has gotten the opposite of elite quarterback play since 2020, and it showed. And you have great play callers on both sides of the ball, and it's just one of those years where he got the ball rolling. We talked about it early in the season. You could get off to a fast start, and they did. And then confidence starts building. Then you get Big Noon kickoff, and you kick Nebraska's butt. And then the fans get into it. Now you're selling out games, and it just snowballs. That positive momentum snowballs, and he's not backing down from anybody, man. He doubled down at media day, saying, going out to UCLA. Yeah, it's a business trip. We're going to play in some old stadium to kick somebody's butt. That's what they did. and stuff like that. So he's a character, man. He's so fun to cover. But yeah, that's Kurt. It's his process, and he brought in guys who he believes in, and staff who he believes in, and they're carrying out that process.
All right, Sammy. I know you've heard the bulletin board material already. The SEC team saying, "Why Indiana? Why are they in fifth place? What have they done? Who have they beat? Their best win is against Michigan." So I got
I
to
guess we
ask:
don't. Yeah, go ahead,
is
ask that question.
this team really, in your mind, the fifth best team in the country? Are they better? Are they worse?
Who is it? Bill Parcells said it. You are what your record is. 10-0 in
I
the
don't
Big
argue with
Ten.
that.
You're 10-0 in the Big Ten, and look, you can control your non-conference schedule a little bit. And
Correct.
IU was supposed to play Louisville, but they got out of that series, which I was a fan of because you're at IU, you need wins, and I
Mhm.
don't think a 9-1 IU team, or if you play Louisville early in the year and lose, I don't think you get to 10-0, and something like that. So it's look, you play. I like that non-conference schedule. Maybe in the future you look at it and go, "Hey, we need to up it," especially if you get a screw job from the committee this year. But you look at the conference schedule, and we talked about it early in the season. There are a lot of teams going through transition, but you know, I look back at Athlon and Lindy's the other day, and they picked them. I think it was 15th and 17th in the Big Ten.
Mhm.
Lindy said, is IU ever going to see a bowl game ever again in the 18-team Big Ten? Okay. They had a anonymous Big Ten assistant coach. Well, all of Indiana's opponents are still better than them. How are they going to win games with these G5 guys? So what is it? They're not good enough. And now I hate the argument of Indiana beat you, so you guys stink. Sure, Nebraska totally forgetting how to play football after we beat them doesn't help. But you played both national title game participants last year and
Mhm.
the national champion of Michigan, who's quickly finding out that when you don't know the other team's plays, it's a little bit harder to play. Um,
True.
it is true. Um, you go on the road to UCLA, who played at LSU, and
Mhm.
IU beat them by a wider margin on the road. Um, Northwestern was an 8-5 team last year. You play them in a unique situation up there, and you can't control what the other teams do. I mean, look, I think IU has the argument to be over Penn State even. And we kind of joke, look, if IU scores an offensive touchdown on Saturday, did they get to jump Penn State? Is a 7-point loss at the shoe better than a 7-point loss, or 7-point loss in Happy Valley at home? I'm sick and tired of the SEC bias, and I know you guys are with me here. You lost 2 games, and you just have the
Yeah.
best PR firm on the planet to do it. You don't want to get left out. Don't lose to Vanderbilt. Don't
Right.
lose to Arkansas, and don't lose to what's Kentucky, 3-7, 3-6, something like that.
4-6.
4-6. Don't lose at home to a Kentucky team that's really not good. And I don't want to hear, because you hear it from the SEC all the time. Wow, we lost bowl games because they don't matter and all that. If they lose, it doesn't matter. To me, and I think we talked about this over the summer. And my big dread of the college football playoff is you're going to make the regular season meaningless. Regular season
Mhm.
has to mean something. Wins have to mean something. If they don't, just take the 12 highest rated teams in the recruiting rankings and put them in a playoff
Mhm.
because they're the most talented teams, at least by scouts and whatever. Um, but games are played for a reason. And I'm tired of the hypotheticals of, well, if Alabama plays Indiana in Bloomington in December, they would be a 14-point favorite. Upsets happen all the time. They
Mhm.
happen all the time.
But
And yeah, go ahead, Chris.
no, Alabama coming anywhere in the North in December. I'm sorry, they're not a 14-point favorite. Not
Maybe
against a
No,
playoff
in
contender.
West Lafayette.
Well, yeah, I was
maybe.
going to say not against a playoff contender.
True.
maybe.
True.
But it's games have to matter and things like that. So and results have to matter. We'll see what happens on Saturday. I think unless you guys go full 2014 Wisconsin, the Big Ten title game on us, I think we're good to be in the college football playoff. But I think this is going to be a great game on Saturday. I really do.
All right, let's break down because the roster has turned over so much, and a lot of the names that we previewed in coming into this season were guys we didn't know. So preview for us a little bit some of the names on this Indiana roster that Ohio State fans need to know. Just maybe highlight a couple names on offense and defense of some of the team leaders right now.
Yeah, there's definitely turnover, and there's been turnover in season two. Eric, Chris, if I told you that IU is going to be 10-0 in November, you'd think, oh man, how many yards does Donovan McCulley have? How many touchdowns does he have? Well, he had 2 catches all year and then left the team. IU lost their best offensive lineman in preseason camp, and Nick Kidwell, and things like that. So, yeah, roster turnover, obviously on offense. You look at Curtis Rourke at quarterback. He's having an outstanding year. Takes care of the ball, makes smart decisions. It's kind of shifty in the pocket, a little bit more than he lets on. He likes to duck out of tackles a lot, and buy some extra time, but he does not turn the ball over. And, even when he did against Maryland, this team is so connected that the defense held Maryland on the 4 turnovers to 0 first downs, 0 points, and -8 yards, which is like ridiculous. So also on offense, Justice Ellison's your running back 1. He kind of got dinged up against Michigan, but Signetti said he was good to go. Elijah Surratt, whose nickname is Waffle House, a self-appointed nickname because he's always open, just like Waffle House.
I love it. That's great.
Um, he's a really, really good route runner, has great hands, can make the contested catches as well. And then you have Omar Cooper Jr., who's a holdover from the old team, who's really come on. He's got 6 touchdowns this year. He's got a couple of them on the ground as well. But he's a guy who could get open. He's fast enough to break away from defenders as well. And he can make contested catches. And then Miles Price is kind of the game breaker in the slot, and then at punt returner. He also got dinged up against Michigan, but should be back ready to go for Ohio State, according to Signetti. But he sealed the game against Washington with the big punt return, and he's a very aggressive punt returner, which you don't really see anymore. He'll try and make the first guy miss and get upfield, and he's not worried about getting smoked. So bravo to him for doing that. That takes a lot of courage if you've ever returned punts. And then defensively, Mikhail Kamara, I believe, leads the Big Ten in tackles for loss and is up there in sacks as well. He's comes over from JMU. He's just been an absolute beast. Along with CJ West, came over from Kent State. He's a big guy in the middle that makes everything go. James Carpenter is an absolute dog. Former walk-on, kind of an undersized defensive tackle, but his motor goes at 1,000 miles an hour. Also from JMU, and then Aiden Fisher and Jalen Walker, your 2 linebackers. Aiden Fisher's got 98 tackles this year. Jalen Walker's an absolute athletic freak. Both those guys come from JMU, and then the guy to watch in the secondary is D'Angelo Pons. If you watch that Washington game, he had the pick 6. There's going to be a double pass. I think Tyreek Tucker deflected it. He takes the screen pass back for a touchdown, and that makes an absolutely gorgeous play, diving backwards, kind of bobbling the ball for a second interception. But he's the number 1 corner. It should be a fun matchup with him and Jeremiah Smith, although they might not just go man-to-man. They usually go sides of the field with him and Jameer Johnson. But yeah, those are the guys. And Amari Farrell. Sorry, he's been playing free safety. 4 interceptions this year, could do it all. Kind of slides up into the linebacker role a little bit. started the year at that rover position, but they moved him to safety, and he's been an absolute game wrecker on defense too.
So that's the players. How is Indiana going to attack Ohio State both offensively and defensively?
Well, I think you gotta go after the offensive line on defense, and Indiana's defensive line is very good at doing that. They have a lot of freedom up there to kind of. Uh, it's almost like they have an option play called for the defensive line, if that makes sense. They pick and choose what twist or what stunts they want to run up there, and sometimes they line up maybe a foot or two apart, and it's a really weird alignment. They'll blitz some guys off the edge too, with Linnell Carr and Terry Jones. Terry Jones, who's now in that rover position, has been used as a blitzer too, and to get in the backfield. And he made some big plays against Michigan to do that. So they'll be aggressive, but they also want to make Ohio State drive the field. Just like everybody, the more plays you run, the higher chance you have of making a mistake. So they don't want. They'll try to keep the receivers in front of them, and like play aggressive, but play kind of soft on the outside too, if that makes sense. Offensively, man, I think they're going to try and get after the secondary and try to pass to open the run. I kind of like what Northwestern did against you guys, except they fumbled the ball too many times. Indiana, you don't want to play not to lose, because that's how you lose. And you want to be aggressive and play your game, but you also want to keep Ohio State's offense off the field. And so you saw it against Washington. Like 3 of the last 4 drives for IU were 7.5 minutes or longer. And they could grind you down with that run game, and they'll use the offensive line to kind of wear you out, which we've never said about Indiana against anybody, except for maybe a few FCS teams and some lower tier FBS teams. They're going to try and get the ball out in space to their playmakers, get first downs and some chunk plays, but also kind of use the clock too.
So you already kind of answered the question about the CFP, so I'm going to skip that one and go to the last one before we get to your score prediction. Update everybody on Curt Cignetti's contract and extension and what's going on with that.
Yeah, so he signed a new 8-year deal that's worth $73 million. It's essentially $8 million a year with a $1 million retention bonus every year. I need to get his agent so I could get that for my contract for school.
No kidding.
Right.
But I think the big part of that contract and why he's staying with IU is that they also promised to invest in the program, and that's been IU's problem forever. They've had windows. I don't know how far you guys go back, but with Bill Mallory, you had a window of success. You never really capitalized. You didn't build facilities and stuff like that. You didn't put into the program. With Tom Allen, the same way. You didn't build up NIL. You kind of upgraded the facilities that needed to be upgraded in the 90s, but in his contract, it sounds like they'll have the NIL investment, they'll have the facility investment, they have a plan to upgrade like the press box, the stands, and all those things, and basically give him whatever he needs. And there's no reason to leave a Big Ten job anymore. Because eventually it's going to get down to the Power 2, and you're like, where are you going? You're going to go to North Carolina? You're going to go to Virginia Tech in the ACC? You're going to go to Florida State, who's suing the ACC? So it's a nice contract. It probably takes him to the end of his career. He's 60. He'll turn 64 next season, so it puts you at 72. More than likely he'll retire at like this is his last contract. but I think it's all those incentives on top of the like $9 million isn't enough, but it's all those other incentives there that really make you think that there's some staying power with Kirk Signetti and the success of this program.
I'll tell you, Sammy, if it makes you feel any better, you don't need to get his agent. My contract with the school I work for, they just made a typo, and apparently I'm making $40,000 a day. So,
Ooh, that's nice.
and that's actually in my contract. Yes.
So you're gonna
So,
take. Hopefully, you take him to court on this, there, Chris. You signed that contract, right?
oh yeah, it's a signed contract, but
That a boy.
yeah,
Well, you
yeah,
didn't tell me this. So where's my bonus? Uh, I'm
so
not gonna. I'm not gonna ask you, Sammy, to give a score prediction unless you'd like to. But maybe you can kind of give me how you see this game going.
Um, the score prediction, I go back and forth. I do think it'll be a great game. I think these are two really, really good teams, and I do think Indiana's for real. Yeah, you look at every game but Michigan, they've blown people out and blown the doors off of people. They rarely make mistakes. Um, they're just so efficient in everything. This is probably the best I've felt ever going into Ohio Stadium against Ohio State. Uh, but that said, it's also the number 2 team in the country with all world talent, and you're on the road. Um, so I think it'll be a great game. I do. I don't think it'll be one of those 12-10 slobber knockers that will be like, this is terrible football, but so much fun. Um, so I think I bounced around 31-27 going either way. I think it's one of those games where, somebody scores late, or, maybe Indiana holds off a comeback, or Ohio State holds off a comeback. But I do think this is a one score game going back and forth. And I think that's good enough to put IU in the playoff. And we'll see how it plays out. I hate playing the hypothetical game, but yeah, I think it's a one score game either way, and it's going to be one that this is what college football is about. You got bordering states; they really don't like each other, and it's going to be fun.
It is gonna be fun, man. I can't wait. This is like I opened the show with Sammy. In my lifetime, I never thought that, and I would say we're probably similar age. I might be a little older than you, Sammy, but in my lifetime, I never that I can remember. I mean, the '80s happened. We did lose to you guys back to back in the '80s, but I was so young, I don't really remember those games. Um, this is the first time I look at Ohio State, Indiana, and I'm like, this is going to be fun. Like this is a heavyweight match. I compared it to Rocky one. We're Apollo Creed. Your guys are Rocky, and everybody's looking at Indiana as it's Indiana, and then all of a sudden Rocky punches Apollo Creed in the mouth, and it's like, oh, this guy thinks this is real, right? Like that's kind of what this season has reminded me of. Like Indiana's punched everybody in the face up to this point, and now they're going up against the champ, if you will. Even though Michigan can claim that, but it was a paper champion. But
asterisks.
yeah, exactly. But this is gonna be huge, man. Are you getting to cover the game in the shoe?
I will be in the radio booth in Columbus,
All right.
doing stats for the IU radio broadcast. So we will be there.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the trip. I look forward to this game. I think it's going to be a blast. If you guys see Sammy at the shoe, give him a wave. Sammy, do us the favor. Tell everybody. Maybe there's some Indiana people who are watching this. They probably already know where the Hoosier Huddle is, but in case they don't and they're new, tell everybody where they can find you, my man.
Yeah, we're on our website is HoosierHuddle.com. Pretty easy. On X, it's at Hoosier_Huddle. We did make the move over to Blue Sky as well. And there we're just at HoosierHuddle.bluesky.whatever it is. And then you could find us on YouTube as well, the official Hoosier Huddle YouTube page on there as well. We have some good stuff. We started doing man on the street for Pulse of the pregame this year. We did find a Connor Stallions at the IU Michigan game there, and he had a big sign of the Michigan School of Espionage. It's pretty funny. So guys, check that out, and all that
Yeah,
stuff. So
that is really good. I watched that. That is really good. I like that. I like the trolling that you did there. I mean, it was well approved from Ohio State fan. All right, guys, that is Sammy. Thank you so much, Sammy. Enjoy the game this weekend, my man.
all right, thanks, Eric. Thank Chris.
Thank you.
And we want to thank Sammy for coming on and previewing that game with us. Chris, your initial thoughts of what Sammy brought to us.
Yeah, I'm really not that surprised by what he said. And watching Indiana this year, if I'm an Indiana fan, I'm very optimistic going into this game. I don't disagree with him. This is not going to be a walk in the park for Ohio State. They're going to have to fight tooth and nail if they want to win this game. So, I'm no more concerned than I was prior to the interview. Um, but you know what? I'm with him. I'm with you, Eric. I think this is going to be a really exciting, very fun game to watch. I think it's going to give us some of those moments that is going to have us on that watch party glad that we don't have a family friendly rating going. Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited for the game.
He said 31-27 either way.
I
I'm
think it's going to be
I'm
a little more than that, but not
okay.
much.
Okay. I'm the other way.
You think the
I
defenses are going to rule this game?
I think defensively, okay. Let me break this down for you. Let me ask you this. Do
Hmm.
you think Jim Knowles and this defense learned anything from the trip to Eugene, Oregon?
I'd like to think so. I wasn't sure after watching versus Nebraska. I felt better after watching Penn State. Um, and then we have Northwestern last week that makes me scratch my head in the first quarter again, first quarter and a half. You know, so yeah, I'd like to think that they learned something, but Eric, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Do you think Indiana offensively is going to be able to do to this defense what Oregon did?
I think a lot of it depends on which Denzel Burke shows up.
Okay, so let's hypothetically say it's the same Denzel Burke that was in Eugene. That's
Then I
worst
think we're
case
in for a
scenario.
fight. I think we're in for a
Oh
big
yeah.
fight,
I think we're in for a
and
fight
I think
regardless.
I think offensively this team could score if that Denzel Burke shows up.
Oh yes. But I think I think Indiana's going to score. I just don't think they're going to be able to score 32 points.
Well, and I'm not saying it's going to be 32 points.
And if the same Denzel Burke, if they attack Denzel Burke and he's getting burnt multiple times, you better pull him.
I will say this. I don't know how much Jim Knowles has learned, but I will say I think Ryan Day has learned, and that may be even more important because, as you're saying, I don't think he'll hesitate to make a pull if he has to. I think that we've seen that he has tried to take control of this team back in the way that we're seeing the defensive rotation working out now. The way we're seeing, I think, Knowles' fingerprint a little more on this defense versus strictly doing things as almost two separate units, the defensive line and then the rest of the defense. I do feel like that's coming together.
I'm glad you mentioned
So
that because in my mind, I felt like, and I feel like, and I believe Ohio State is learning how to play complementary defense. Now, what I mean by that is
yes,
the front side and the back side of this defense are learning how to work together. And with the improved play of Sonny Styles at linebacker, I feel like we're getting a complete defensive unit. Let's keep in mind this is the number one defense in the country.
yeah,
Okay. Indiana's not the number one, but they're up there. They're doggone close. And again,
They're top 5, aren't they?
yes, but this this is a top five defense who's played Oregon and Penn State. And if you look at Oregon versus Penn State, I felt like this defense took a major step forward.
Oh, absolutely.
And I believe defensively they're going to do enough to allow Ohio State to score enough points to win this football game. I have a score of 24-17.
See, now we are more similar on my spread or on our spreads.
The spread is 10 points, I think. 10 and a half
Yeah,
was it last I looked?
10 and a
I
half.
do not think we beat them by 2 scores.
I don't think that this is what I'm saying. I don't believe we cover, and you're right. It was 10 and a half. I had this game at 34-24. I think Ohio State wins by 10.
And Sammy had it 31-27 either way. He didn't I understand why. He works for the Indiana radio program,
Yeah.
folks. Okay? Like he's not going to rat himself out on publicly in front of everybody. So I you know,
It was a
I
very politically correct answer he gave.
it was, and I understand why he gave it. All
I
right.
do as well.
So you said 34-24 or you said
I like
34-27?
34-24.
34-24. So you do think it's 10, just not 10 and not 11 to go over. Okay.
I don't think it goes over. I don't think they cover.
Indiana's good.
They are good.
And like Sammy said, man, 10-0 is 10-0. Do
It
you know
is absolutely right.
who's the other 10-0 team in college football right now?
It's Army, isn't it?
That's
Isn't
one.
Army still in defeat? Yeah,
Oregon.
Oregon. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oregon,
It's
Army,
not
and
Alabama.
Indiana.
It's not Georgia. It's not BYU, who was
Well, no, it's
undefeated.
not Alabama or Georgia. Those losers are walking around with 2 losses.
Exactly. But you see my point. He has a point in what he's saying. Okay?
Yeah.
So I think I've read and have listened to some Ohio State fans who I think are overconfident because they think this is the same Indiana that they have beaten 28 stream. It's not.
No.
It is not. Kurt Signetti has completely overhauled the culture of this program. Now, what is interesting to me is he gets the contract offer, accepts it, and signs it the week of Ohio State.
Mm-hmm. That was a confidence booster.
But his answer to that was so nonchalant. Like, yeah, we played the what ifs. My wife and I like it in Bloomington. We feel comfortable here. Indiana's going to make a significant push to improve facilities and invest in the program. We're staying.
Yeah. That was a confidence booster on the part of the university to a coach who has earned it. But more importantly, I think this was Kurt Signetti making a statement to his players that, hey, and to recruits, hey,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to be here, and we're going to go out and we're going to compete with the big dogs in this conference.
Uh-huh. Look,
And
I don't
just
think
watch what happens Saturday. That is Kurt
I
Signetti's statement.
I don't think Kurt Signetti in Indiana is going to be a consistent 10-11 win team every single year.
No, but I'll tell you right now, I feel confident this is a bowl team every year.
I agree. This is a team whose bad years look like 7-5,
Yeah.
8-4, 6-6. And those bad years are 1 every 3, 1 every 4. And the other years they're winning 9, 10, 11 games.
And Michigan has Sharon Moore.
They're competing. Indiana's ceiling is what Michigan State used to be under D'Antonio.
Yes. And you know what?
And was that team a thorn in our side?
You know, and that's what I said to Corey the other night when we were talking on his show when we were on the couch there, man. I'm telling you, he said to me, I said, you know what? This reminds me of a Mark D'Antonio, a Barry Alvarez type of coach team.
Oh yeah, I remember
This
you
is the
said that. Yeah.
this is the guy who goes out and takes 3-star guys and turns these guys into all pros when they face the Ohio States and the Michigans of the
Mm-hmm.
world.
Mm-hmm.
He's a special coach, Eric. I don't think there's any denying that. I think he's a very special coach.
So I asked the question 6 months ago. Can a G5 All-Star team compete at a G4 level? The answer to that is
Clearly, yes.
yes. Yes.
But
Yes, they
now
can.
the next step becomes, can they
Can
compete
they
at an elite level in college
can
football?
they can they compete on a national championship level? That's the next question. That question gets
And,
answered
and I'll tell
this
you what, Eric,
Saturday.
and Sammy mentioned it. If this team walks away, and even if they lose by less than 7 on the road in Columbus, they're walking away saying, we are legit contenders. They really are. And I think at that point, if this team walks away and loses by 7 or less, I honestly think if they lose by 10 or less, are a college football playoff team, and the nation better take notes. And you know what? I want to see Alabama. I want to see Tennessee. I want to see Texas or Georgia come in and play in Indiana in the frigid cold in late December at Indiana. I'd love nothing more.
Well, it might happen. It might absolutely happen. Guys, in the comment section below, let us know what your score prediction is. I know how Indiana fans have been this year. They are going to probably watch this video and they're going to be making their comments in the comment section below. By the way, Hoosier fans, welcome. If you don't mind, subscribe to the channel. We'll take all of your subscriptions, man. We appreciate that. Cost you nothing. It's absolutely free. We welcome all Big Ten fans here, all fans of college football. Let us know your score prediction in the comment section below as well. And listen, this is what it's all about, guys. Hoosier fans, I know you've experienced this in college basketball before, not so much in college football. Welcome. This is what it feels like. Welcome to the party. It's going to be a great game Saturday. We are looking forward to it. Please, again, like, subscribe, share. It really does help the channel. We really do appreciate it. We'll be back Thursday night for our live call-in show. So make sure you check that out. Thursday night, 8 o'clock Eastern. The live watch party is Saturday, this Saturday at 12 noon, right here on the channel. So ring that bell, get notified when we go live so you don't miss an episode ever again here at the OHIO podcast. Chris, you know what's up. Be kind to one another. I owe someone's OH. Sing Carbon High with all your heart. Till next time. OH!
IO.
Go Bucks.